This podcast is not designed to advertise or take the place of therapy. Courageous Conversations is a safe space to talk about changing the narrative. Hello, and welcome to Courageous Conversations. I am your host, Tracy O. Thank you so much for joining me in the inaugural episode. The goal of Courageous Conversations is to encourage, empower, and inspire women to become the most authentic version of themselves. Courageous Conversations was born as a result of me experiencing divorce. This podcast is a space that seeks to debunk the negative images of African American women depicted in the media, specifically reality television. With its use of ordinary people, reality television was created to be the perfect genre of television programming in terms of minimizing production and other upfront costs, maximizing profits. In today's episode, we're going to tackle how important positive imagery is in media to us and to us as an African American culture, and how we can change the narrative of what's portrayed in media. And we're also going to look at the breakdown of post-traumatic growth and what that all is all about. So today I am so very excited and honored and privileged to have Dr. West, a licensed therapist in the state of Virginia. Dr. West, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to
Dr.
be
West,
here.
will you please share a little about yourself, specifically where you matriculated and the type of counseling you specialize in?
Oh, yes. I so let me tell you how I got to the counseling to do the counseling pursue the counseling degree. Um, I full-time teach in seminary, the Samuel DeWitt Parker School of Theology at Virginia Union.
Uh-huh.
And one of the classes that we were doing, we called it formation, but it was a class that had the students who are mostly clergy or people who are going to be clergy. It was a class that had them do a lot of the psychology assessments, like the Myers-Briggs or
Uh-huh.
the MMPI. And so, long story short, when as they were doing all these, and I was doing this class, it just helped me to see how much clergy themselves had concerns and issues and mental and emotional issues
Mhm.
that were not resolved. And so that motivated me to go back to school and get a degree in counseling to be a therapist, so I can be a resource for clergy in terms of a
Right,
life
right.
therapist. And so I went back to school and got the master's degree, and of course went through the process of what you need to do for the state to become licensed, and finish that process probably in 2019, I believe, 2019.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're going to dive right in.
Okay.
What are some things you feel that we as a people can change about the negative stereotypes that plague the image of Black people and women specifically?
Okay. First I want to say that it's important that we note that many of the negative stereotypes about Black people did not originate with Black people, but with people who want to portray African Americans in a negative light. And
Yeah.
so I think many of those negative images are rooted in racism and white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about African American women in particular, and African American women in particular, and African Americans overall, we are not responsible for others who intentionally view us in a negative light,
Okay.
and for those who refuse to look past those stereotypes so they can see us as God sees us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if there is a role for African Americans and African American women in changing the negative stereotypes about us and about them, it is to be intentional about us being and becoming the people that we have been created to be. So in other words, I think it's important for us to continue to develop and grow and reach our God-given potential and God-given possibilities. Not because the negative stereotypes are out there, but because that is, I believe, what God would want us to do and God would want us to be. In other words, to live the life that we have been created to live, in spite of what others say or what others see about us. Now, I do think for some of us, I think for some of us, it could be a motivation to not portray those particular negative stereotypes.
For sure,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah, because I'll be honest with you, I remember years and years ago, and I can't remember what motivated me, but I do remember that I even said to myself that I'm going to be an African American male that, and I didn't say it like this, but I probably meant it like this, that wasn't living a life that portrayed whatever negativity people thought Black people were.
Yes, totally agree. Totally agree. Love that. Okay. Author Sagan Garcia wrote an article in the Journal of Intersectionality defining the traditional definition of family, consisting
Hmm.
of a husband, wife, and children. This definition is supplemented by an image of a white family.
Hmm.
How has African American culture molded their own narrative of this idea of family?
Oh, yes, and let me just say, I think because that idea of family was at one time portrayed as the norm.
Yes.
That I think at times I think whatever ethnicity was in this country was had to deal with facing that norm. However, I do think the African American, particularly, once we recognize our own culture and that we did not have to assimilate into
Yes.
something that we were not, that we recognize that our beliefs, our habits, our customs, and our language were really okay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think once we accept that we uh, get comfortable in the culture and the culture that is true to our ethnicity, and
Mm-hmm.
then we just kind of continue to live that
Okay.
in spite of what somebody else might be saying. But and then I also want to say, that there really is no homogeneous African American culture,
Uh-huh.
although there are similarities through various things in terms of culture that African Americans do. So for instance, someone who grows up African American in let's just say in the city of New York may 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 have some different things culture wise than another African American that grows up in a rural South like in Mississippi.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But
Thank
I
you.
do think that a time has come where we are comfortable being who we are.
Who we
Uh,
are. We're comfortable in our own skin.
yes, yeah. Now, I will say this though, in terms of culture, and when it comes to culture in general, that African Americans have also learned to because I don't let me say I don't think that the majority race uh, has accepted us
For
fully.
sure.
I think they accept things about us, like our
Yeah.
music, like our sports, and
Mm-hmm.
like our
What's
dance, and
beneficial
all
to
those things
them.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't accept us, and so they're not as comfortable with us. And so I do think that because of who we are and because of what was presented to us before, we can easily navigate a culture that is not ours
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
still maintain our own culture.
Yes. America since the 1920s has always illustrated what the American dream looks like. The
Hmm.
American dream is to be married, have a house, white picket fence, two kids, and a dog. When these things are no more, we are often left with many questions and no answers. In your eyes, how has the ideology of family changed over the years in media specifically?
Okay. Yeah. So, since I have not done any research on this, but I do think that, and I don't know who started that whole idea of what a family is, like you were saying earlier, the husband and wife, the two children, and the white picket fence. I think at a time that is what media did portray
Uh-huh.
as the norm, even though I don't think it was the norm for the masses. I don't think it was the norm for even the majority ethnicity in this country. Um, but I do think that when individuals again became comfortable with their own culture, that that they did not tend to try to live um, in terms of the traditional family. And
Okay.
so I think that two things. I think one, that the media, when that happened, and it's still happening, the media displays what is actually going on in society.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
For
and
sure.
so and so therefore, like now we have various what is the show I want to think about? Like when Modern Family came out.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think that was an attempt to show a good attempt to show how family can be defined differently. And
Okay.
so and so I think for the media purposes, because I think in the end of the day, media is all about money,
For
and
sure.
so I don't think it's beneficial for the media to portray something that is something that they want to be the norm that is not the actual reality of people's lives.
Okay. All right. Do you feel that divorce has become normalized because of media?
So I'll say yes and no to that.
Okay.
Um, um, I think anything that is more accepted and less ostracized in society helps the process of normalization.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so when individuals themselves, because I think there was a time that divorce was looked at as something negative.
Yes.
And so I think in our Western culture, particularly a culture that promotes individualism, and that people individually can make their own choices. When people uh, felt discomfort or whatever they felt that they need to get divorced, then they started doing that. And I think the media also betrayed that, or portrayed that, not betrayed that, portrayed that.
Mm-hmm.
Then that helps to normalize divorce overall.
Okay. Okay.
Because I think in terms of the media, the more people see it in the media on TV and in print media, whatever the media is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the more people see it, then they're less apt to view it in negative ways.
Right. Right. So the media kind of guide what it is that people believe.
The media can definitely guide what people believe, and it also can affirm what people believe.
Yes, 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 yes. Which leads us to our next question.
Hmm.
Cultivation theory posits that repeated exposure to pattern television messages has significant capacity to cultivate the minds of viewers by subtly and directing shaping their views, attitudes, beliefs, values, and perceptions.
Hmm.
When people are trying to get a new sense of normalcy after a tragic life event such as divorce or death, what are some of the first steps in embracing the new normal?
Say that question for me again, please.
When looking at the post-traumatic growth model, we
Hmm.
we realize it has five domains: a greater appreciation of life, improve relationships, increase personal strength,
Hmm.
openness to new possibilities, and spiritual growth. And so when we're trying to bounce back to establish a new normal after divorce, what are some of the first steps that we could do in embracing this new normal?
Okay. Okay. The first step is see a therapist.
See a therapist for sure.
uh, yeah, I think that divorce, let me just, regardless of how the process that led to divorce, divorce itself um, takes a toll on a person.
For sure.
Even a person, let's just say, even if the person was, even if let's just say a person did not do anything to cause the divorce, even if their partner did whatever it was that they did to cause the divorce process is very trying. And so I think one of the first things to do is for the person to really, if they don't know about it, to really learn and to be self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this process starts internally for people to really begin to understand um, um, who they are,
Yes.
um, and then to understand the to reflect on what the marriage was for them, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what led to the divorce, uh, how is that impacting them in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and that moment can be months or
For
years,
years, years for
right?
sure.
Depending on individual, and let me just say, and they have to be intentional because the process, because it's also a grief process
It
because
is.
something has been lost.
It is.
So when I do therapy, and whether it's people who are recently getting a divorce or people that have been divorced for years, there's a process to go through that 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 helps you to understand if when you are open, because this process can also be, although the process can be healing, the process can also be painful
Yes.
when you recognize all that went through to get you to the point of divorce. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that the introspection, the self awareness, understanding who they are, and then being intentional about steps to move forward. Whether
Mm-hmm.
that's steps to move forward in another relationship, steps to move forward in career, steps to move forward in building new friendships.
Uh-huh.
Uh, uh, divorce is Divorce doesn't have to be. It's like let me put this. Divorce can be a commencement because I think what's key to that is self awareness and perspective.
For sure. For sure.
How we look at it, how we view it.
As someone who's gone through divorce, for me, it was the end of something, but the beginning of something new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I view it. And
Yeah.
that's my hope as I champion for women to be able to convey that message to them. And so as
Mm-hmm.
we live intentionally and coexist with others, how do we circumvent the feeling of being overwhelmed without displacing feelings? For example, sometimes we lash out at those closest to us simply because we can't seem to get a handle on something happening in our lives. I know I've done that
Mm-hmm.
a gazillion times at the height of my divorce, just
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of felt like I was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what would you suggest?
Okay. So first, I would think my first thought would be that I don't think it's healthy to circumvent any feeling.
Okay.
But I will say this. I think part of the struggles when it comes to emotions is that um, it's just like communication, right? We learn how to communicate growing up by the people around us. Uh, but until we either take a class or see a therapist or read about it, we don't always know what effective communication is. I think it's the same thing with
Mm-hmm.
our emotions.
I
we are
totally
not
agree.
taught how to regulate our emotions.
For sure.
And
For sure.
so, and I think on top of that, in this country, particularly in this country, that that the emotions are looked at almost, negatively. And
Hmm.
so unfortunately people suppress them, um and or so for instance, particularly emotions like anger, right? So what we do is we start looking at those emotions as negative, not because the emotion is not because the emotion is negative, but because the behavior that we see associated with anger is negative.
Right, right.
And so I think we have to help people learn how to regulate their emotions. Now, this is kind of a topic because I'm doing some research now, particularly on emotional intelligence as it pertains to clergy.
Okay.
And and so I think regulate emotions, and I see this a lot with my clients too. I have to teach them how to regulate their emotions. And I'll say to them, whatever you're feeling, and that's why I don't like people to circumvent it. I said, you have the right to feel whatever you are feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes with you also processing and regulating those emotions in a healthy way. Because you also have to understand that whatever you feel and you have a right to feel, but emotions are not always facts.
Right.
And I
And
and,
we
and, and I
act
don't
off
think people get
emotion.
all of that.
We
Yeah.
act off emotion sometimes.
Yeah, because we have not learned how to regulate them,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
when what we do is right and we have not learned how to um, we have not learned how to.
I think we were talking about how we can intentionally live and coexist with others without being overwhelmed. And so
Yeah.
we're
Hmm.
discussing that our feelings are validated
Hmm.
and that we have to learn how to handle our emotions because we often act on how we feel in an irresponsible way.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
that's how we're unable to have those healthy, courageous conversations
yes,
because our emotions take over
yes, yeah,
and we come across as being rude or sassy. And it's just often misunderstood because
right.
we're not sure how to handle ourselves.
Yeah, and you see that on reality TV, right?
Yes,
Because what ends up happening is, I think it's a couple of things. People don't regulate their emotions, and they don't know how to communicate effectively. Be-
yes,
because it becomes, so the emotions start getting intense, and then because we don't communicate effectively, it's all about what I need to say to you. I'm not listening to you. Even when you're talking, I'm just thinking about what my comeback is going to be, and
yes,
that just intensifies the emotions even more because they're not being regulated. And then it gets into a cycle, and then particularly on reality TV, that becomes the norm.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the
And
media
so,
will continue to portray
oh,
that because it makes them
yes,
money.
yes. And then for me, what I said is that melanated women become the villain.
Oh yeah, yes, 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 yes.
And so because other ethnic groups may not have any real interaction with us other than what they see on TV, that becomes their perception of who we are when that's oftentimes far from the truth.
No, absolutely. I was watching. I can't remember what show it was. I saw actually. I saw this on social media. They were showing a show, and the contestants had to guess who these famous people were, and many of the white contestants could not even guess a lot of the African Americans,
I
even though
saw
they were
that. I
famous,
saw that. I saw that. I saw
which
that.
means that they don't see us.
They don't see us.
And so when they see those negative images, it just it just kind of confirms the negative things they already believe about us.
For sure, for sure. Dr. West, when I think about Love and Marriage Huntsville, and
Mm-hmm.
I look at the main character, Melanie, she
Mm-hmm.
is one who can be admired.
Mm-hmm.
This show started as premise for friends coming together to create a group to
Mm-hmm.
foster home ownership in their community. Somewhere along the way, in her marriage, her husband has an affair, and the dissolution of their marriage ensues. She receives so much backlash right now because of her chutzpah. She's a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
She's a
Mm-hmm.
trendsetter. She's
Mm-hmm.
knocking down barriers among others on the show, so to speak. She's become an entrepreneur. She has her own
Mm-hmm.
skin line. And so those things that are so great about her aren't very well being portrayed because people just want to see her as someone who's making it difficult now for her ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
So how when viewing those type of shows, what is it that we can control in our own homes or in the communities or people that we interact with? How can we shift those conversations so that they're not just seeing her as a sapphire?
Yeah, yeah. And so I think for I think that we have to be intentional whatever we watch on TV,
Hmm.
particularly when it's reality TV, that it's not reality.
Yes.
That
It's
that a,
entertainment.
that a lot of what they portray is not reality. So, for instance, those shows, the producers, the media cannot make money off of those shows unless the negativity is a part of the show, a
Hmm.
main part of the show. And so anybody who watches those shows has to know, has to be able to say to themselves, this may be entertainment, but this is not real. In other words, this is not Melanie's whole life.
Yes.
This is what they choose to show in order to make the money they want to make.
Okay.
Because because if we look at those shows, and not even just reality TV, even other shows, when we look at those things as being the norm for us,
Hmm.
then we may end up living fake lives.
For
You know.
sure.
And so I think we have to be very, very intentional about how we allow those particular shows to um, how we allow ourselves to emulate what we see on those shows.
Yes. 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 And so that leads me into self-awareness. Being
Hmm.
self-aware as a culture is what helps us not fit in the mold of what's actually
Hmm.
being portrayed. What is your definition of self-awareness?
So when I think about self-awareness, I think self-awareness is our ability to focus on the ability to focus on yourself in healthy ways to determine if our thoughts and our emotions and our behavior are in sync with our values and our beliefs.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's an introspective process, and it's an intentional process.
For sure. For sure.
And if we're not introspective and if we're not intentional, then that is how we start emulating others because we're not
Mm.
comfortable with ourselves.
For sure. So how then can we rebuild this within ourselves if it's not there? We don't realize that it's there.
Yeah, that honestly I think that's a tough process to do by yourself.
Hmm.
Of course, you got to see a therapist. And I say see a therapist. It doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist, but we have to be in touch with someone who's in touch with themselves.
Yeah.
And we have to, it's important for us to have people around us that are not yes people.
Hmm.
And so for ourselves, we have to start asking ourselves the questions, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? Um, what am I, what is the reason that I did what I did? What is the reason that
Hmm.
I say what I said? So it's all introspective because in some ways society will make us believe that it's always the other person.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And that kind of thought process It doesn't help us to do the introspective things around self-awareness.
So what I hear you saying is you have to be real, you have to be willing to have that courageous conversation with yourself to
With your
realize the power of you.
The power of you. Yes,
The
yes,
power of you.
yes, absolutely.
Dr. Dr. West, thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I sincerely hope my audience will be able to use some of what has been shared.
Mhm.
And for my viewers, if you want to contact Dr. West, I'll list his information in the description box below. Thank you so very much for joining me. To my audience, be kind to yourselves and others, and I'll see you next time. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it.